Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installment of a different series every show. It is Tuesday, March 3rd, and Taylor Sheridan is back at it with another Western. Sort of. I mean, he does have the Madison coming out in a couple weeks, but
Yeah,
as
I
far
saw an
as
ad for that.
his biggest show of all time, he ended up giving it to his biggest fan of all time, Spencer Hudnut. And Spencer Hudnut is the one writing these episodes, the one show running here. He's the guy who pitched Taylor Sheridan on this spinoff a week before Yellowstone actually ended, and they had already shot the ending for each of the characters. So part of the reason why Kayce, the main character,
Yeah.
the Dutton's youngest, right? That he has this traumatic kind of beginning where they retcon certain things, kind of like in Scrubs, where you find out that JD and Elliot didn't make it. Suddenly you find out that Monica's dead. And so that's the thing that fans were speculating on, because going into it, they saw the cast listing and there was apparently the wife's character, the number 2 that they would have expected, just was missing.
Right, yeah. You don't have to see the original Yellowstone to understand this show. However, if you're in the
And
process,
neither of us have.
yeah, I only
Like,
ever saw the pilot like a long
We've seen
time ago.
independent episodes of
Right.
Yellowstone, but haven't followed the full thing.
But if you are watching Yellowstone, if you're in the process of it, I would recommend you don't watch this series yet, because they do talk about the fate of certain characters.
Right. They do a good recap like several times. It feels like a little bit of an exposition dump in case you missed it. Even when he's joining the Marshals team,
Yeah.
they kind of start discussing the plot points. The biggest one, I think, is obviously when What's-His-Face didn't return, Kevin Costner.
Yeah, John Dutton. Right?
And part of the reason for that was because he had like crazy scheduling.
It was
he has
really
a bunch
the
of
Horizon.
Westerns.
It was the Horizon films, right? That was the main reason.
But it was like he had agreed to do Yellowstone Part B of season 5, but they kept on bumping. This is his way of putting it. They kept on bumping the timetable that they were going to shoot in. And he said they weren't respectful to what his timeline was with the cast and staff and crew that he was responsible for with Netflix. And it's funny because now you have Taylor Sheridan, who's now going to also be switching networks, was working so hard on this other spinoff, 6666,
Right.
and that he wanted to buy a ranch for like $200 million, and they ended up having to spend up for that. And so it caused a lot of delays and everything.
It's impossible not
It's
to.
drama.
Yeah, it's impossible not to look at Yellowstone, especially the franchise, as kind of a classic rise and fall story, because in 2022 it was the most watched TV show. And then Peacock subscriptions surged 26% after CBS aired a season of Yellowstone in 2023. And that was the second biggest contributor to Peacock and the biggest TV show contributing to it, with like 4% in 2024. But then a lot of strange things started to happen. Like you said, Kevin Costner
Its main star left.
6666 or whatever it was called. That's like
Got
been
nixed.
held indefinitely. Yeah,
Right.
it's
You know
not
what
gonna be
this, you're
coming out.
just describing The Walking Dead to me. Started off amazing, had the biggest viewership for AMC, then slowly it got a little weird,
Well,
and then they lost the main star, and then they had a bunch of spin-offs that they kept on talking about. And they have had some, but not as many as they originally intended.
Right, and it's not even just or Yellowstone in general. Like Taylor Sheridan's last shows, Landman Season 2 and Tulsa King Season 3, both of those seasons have not been liked by fans.
Really? Because I thought Landman was really popular.
Season 2, I think specifically, is what the audience has not liked. I think critics have said that it's good.
That's news to me. I know I wasn't a huge fan of the pilot for several reasons, but if you talk to Spencer Hudnut, the guy who's running this show, which is supposed to be more of a procedural than like a full serialization, he would completely disagree with your analytics there, because he says that Sheridan, this is a quote, is the best writer of my generation in the last 20 years.
There was a time where I said that Sheridan was the hardest working man in Hollywood.
He's just Ryan Murphy.
I
He's
took-
popping
yeah,
out show after show after
who did
show.
I take that? I took his crown off and put it on Ryan Murphy's head once I learned about the shows that he was coming.
I disagree. I don't think that they're actually hardworking. I think they're lazy bums. I'm kidding. The other thing that I want to point out that Hudnut said, he's not just like, oh, I'm pro Sheridan, or like I'm a big fan. This guy, if Sheridan had a band, he would be his cover band.
Okay, so
Right.
yeah.
Because he even said Yellowstone is the biggest show to come out in 20 years. And I understand you just pointed out that there was like a couple years where it was the biggest show technically.
Huge.
But I would not call it the biggest show in 20 years, because 20 years covers Game of Thrones. It may even cover Breaking Bad. I don't believe that.
So
It covers The Walking Dead
I'm
even.
talking more about popularity.
Well, no, I'm talking about what Hudnut said. Do you not agree that, or do you agree that Yellowstone was the biggest show to come out in 20 years?
At one point, I really honestly do. Around like season 2 and 3
You guys are
before the
insane.
problems, it was so popular. I don't think you understand how popular it
I don't.
was.
No, I absolutely don't. So let's talk about this new show, Marshals. It was originally supposed to be titled Why Marshals, but then the answer was so obvious they dropped the why. Spencer Hudnut previously worked on his claim to fame as SEAL Team.
And that
So
was my number one comparison to the show.
really, do you know anything about SEAL Team?
No, but Kayce Dutton and his teammate Calvin were
Right.
both SEAL team members
Yes, so
and
that's where I can
CBS.
see why Spencer Hudnut gravitated towards it.
Right.
He wanted to go from one SEAL to the next SEAL. However, do you know who starred in SEAL Team? David Boreanaz,
Oh, of
right?
course, yeah.
Yes, and when they offered him the role originally, he said no. They actually had to offer to. They went around to a bunch of people and then offered to him at the end again, and he said yes
And he
to it.
said yes, he
But that
changed
was
his mind.
right after Bones, so he did that for like 10 years. That's the only thing I know about SEAL Team. I thought you were going to compare it to one of your favorite series from a few years ago, Terminal List, with Chris Pratt, right?
Yeah,
And then
it's
also the sequel series, because he gets kind of recruited, or at least in one of, maybe it's the second one, the Dark Wolf, where he gets recruited into a secondary unit.
that was Taylor Keish's character, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not as dark as that, however, the first scene is something way out of the original Dark
The
Wolf.
first scene from Marshals.
Yes, because it's very blue, but it takes place on a battlefield.
Very
It's
blue.
Yeah, it's overly so, but Kayce Dutton, he's having a nightmare, and he's calling out for
You're talking about
Monica.
the color correction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it never gets that blue again in the episode, but Kayce Dutton, he's calling out for Monica. An attack has just taken place. He's in his army getup and in the SEAL team getup, and he's calling out for her, and he's
He
not
looked
able to find
happy
her.
when he was on the phone. It was like one of those things where he didn't know that she had cancer. I didn't understand that part at all, because it was like, if she has cancer, you would think it would have been a slow moving process. But maybe we find out that she just didn't tell anybody, or that they thought that she was recovering. It did seem to happen rather fast, because Tate, who is playing Casey's son,
Right, he's a teenager.
right? Like, I don't think he's too much older than when we left him in the last series.
They didn't recast him?
No, I don't think so. I think he is one of the
Okay.
returning characters. You have several returning characters. Again, I haven't seen the full Yellowstone, more than like 2 episodes. One thing I do appreciate and remember, though, is that the episode I saw had Casey being haunted by this wolf, right?
Yeah,
And
okay, so that makes sense
and
as to
so
what
it's like
happens.
Sons of Anarchy, where they constantly had the imagery of animals.
Right.
Also, like Sons of Anarchy, where Tara dies and Jax is left with Abel, right?
Yeah.
And furthermore, though, the wolf was like his spirit guru, his spirit animal, and like it was a whole journey in that episode that I saw. So it was weird to me when they started playing Deer Hunter with it, where at the beginning, instead of trying to shoot it, and
Yeah.
then at the end he didn't. Like, they flipped that and had at the beginning of the episode it was looking at him and he decides not to shoot, and then at the end he does, or
Oh,
maybe
there's
he doesn't actually shoot it.
there's so much there that I want to touch on. So Mayans MC did that all the time, where they had an animal at the beginning and the end. But yes, after Casey gets up from his dream, he's wrangling up some cows and he sees the wolf. And my first question was, what is the death scene going to be? Because if you know anything about Yellowstone, even the bare minimum, you know that in the first couple scenes, usually the first scene, there is something that dies. Like John Dutton
So
in
it's
Yellowstone, he shoots a horse, putting out of its misery in the first scene of Yellowstone. In 1883, Elsa Dunn has that fight scene with
I thought
the
you were saying it
naked-
was like Law and Order, where there's always a body at the beginning that they're hunting
Well,
down.
I mean, kind of, because like in 1883, Elsa Dunn has that huge fight scene where she's like killing a ton of Native Americans after the wagon attack. In 1923, right, Kara Dutton kills the man in the woods with the shotgun.
But the difference being Sheridan didn't write this.
Right.
Yes.
No, so that was part of the things that I liked, where he decided not to shoot the wolf, not only because it was a save the cat moment, kind of for Kayce Dutton, but also because of the fact that they decided to change it and it was different in that way.
Well,
So I
he
actually
was-
like that.
He was sort of the hero, I guess, if you were going to call him one, at the end of the original series, because he kind of fulfilled the promise of 1883, where James Dutton, the great grandfather, right, promised that he was going to return the land to the tribe. And then it took like 7 generations, but finally at the end, despite his dad, I guess, I don't know if he didn't want to do it or not, but like, because he died and everything, he was able to keep a piece of it. That's where they're living now, Casey and his son. But most of it was given back to Thomas Rainwater, it looks like.
And when it comes to the elements of Yellowstone, the stuff is still there. Like you're saying, the reservation politics, there's more horses than a ranch would even have, it seems like at some points. Gunfire, outlaws, law enforcement.
There is a lot of violence there. I would not want to live in Yellowstone based on where it is. They shot in Utah. It still looks beautiful, but they shot in Utah.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it takes place in Montana, of
They
course.
shot, I mean, Yellowstone, they used some of the same housing that they made for that. So I think they shot some Yellowstone there as well.
That's cool.
Want to hear a Montana game?
Sure.
Okay, so here are five Montana facts, and one of them is false.
Okay.
Ready? Montana elected the first woman to Congress before women were even allowed to vote. Do you just want to true false it?
Yeah, let's
Go for it.
do that. I'm gonna say true.
A lot of them are true. There's more cows than people in Montana.
True. I know that there's a huge cow population.
Huge cow
It's
population.
insane. And bear population, I think.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Did you look up Montana facts?
No,
before
I
this
just know
podcast?
that.
Okay, it's not the only state that has more cows than people. That's also crazy. Montana's state bird is the bald eagle.
That's very patriotic. I could see that being true. Sure, true.
And that's not true. And now you know the last
okay.
two are true. So Montana's name comes from the Spanish word montaña, roughly meaning mountainous, which is funny because the name of this episode is Piya Wiconi, which is Lakota for new beginning or
they say
rebirth.
They say that.
Oh,
at the
okay.
very
They
end
tell
of
you
the
that in the
episode.
show,
Yeah.
so I wasn't listening the full time in the TV show apparently. And then Miss Montana has never won a Miss America pageant. I found that very, very funny.
Well, I feel bad for her. I can't.
I didn't even know they were still making Miss America pageants. Anyways, so do you want to? Luke Grimes plays Kayce Dutton. What do you think
Right.
of his character?
I like Kayce Dutton. I think he's the best character. If I saw correctly, I think he's also executively producing this TV show.
A lot of people are. Like the guy who plays, I think, Mo is also an executive producer, or at least because they have a lot of indigenous like community work that they're doing, and so they try to bring that in. I have a Luke Grimes game.
Okay.
It's about his prior roles, which I found very entertaining.
I don't know his career too well.
That's so one of these is fake. All right.
Okay.
This one I'm not going to tell you which one. I'm just going to read them all off. He starred in all 50 Shades movies.
Oh, I know that to be true.
Okay.
I know that to be true. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say he played Elliot Gray, who is not Christian Grey, not the main character, but the main character's brother. Which it's okay. I didn't even know the main character had a brother. I assumed he was an only child.
I thought so too, but yeah, okay.
Have you seen the movie? Is that what you're telling me?
I saw the first one.
Oh wow.
So.
Okay, Taken 2. He played the Taken girl's boyfriend.
Okay.
He teamed up with Bradley Cooper in American Sniper. And the last one is in Hemlock Grove, he was eaten by Bill Skarsgård.
Oh, I think that he was an American Sniper. I'm going to go with the second one.
The second one being he wasn't the Taken girl's boyfriend, and
he
Taken 2, he absolutely was.
Oh, the Bill Skarsgård one just seems so like it's too crazy to not be true.
The connection is the wolf. Because he's a werewolf in that Bill Skarsgård is, and so like I thought that would be the little bit of it. That's the end of the games. But anyway, so you've got Kayce here, and he's sort of depressed because his wife is dead.
Yeah, Tate, you can kind of see there's some underlying resentment. I was thinking that he probably blames Kayce a little bit for Monica's death. So
Why?
I was thinking, because again, he's just supposed to be kind of an angsty teen. You know, he's even at the protest where that bomb goes off later on in
Reminds
the episode.
me of Ransom Canyon when that kid goes off in the first, Josh Duhamel or whatever his name. Duhamel was he. I couldn't pronounce it in that podcast either. But he lets him go for his 16th birthday and whatever, and he gets in the car accident. Let's hope that Tate stays okay.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Tate is going to be, especially with Kayce Dutton there. But yeah, his former Navy SEAL teammate Calvin shows up with a box of, I guess, dynamite that Kayce wants, and I don't think we
friends
ever
are
see...
friends. Friends come with goods of dynamite.
Yeah, and they go out like shooting in the forest, and it turns out that Calvin is a better shot there than he was in the army. But the real reason that Calvin is there is because he feels like there are some outlaws at Black Rock near where Kayce is. So Kayce then meets kind of Calvin's team because Calvin is the leader.
I mean, he's recruiting him.
Right.
You can just jump to the fact that he wants the guy to join his crew.
At first, yes, but it seems like Kayce keeps on being like, no, 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 I'm just gonna help with this investigation. But
That's how you rope him in.
yeah.
Got to give him a taste.
Right, but we meet Belle. She was a former ATF agent. Miles, he's a member of Broken Rock, the tribe, and so obviously the reservation is very important to him. And then Andrea, she joined the Marshals to avenge her father's death, who was a cop at the
She's
time.
the one who later on goes to the bar with the rest of them and then starts like messing with their country music, right?
She by far is the most short-tempered one. Yeah.
She's the shortest as well. So just short in general.
I guess, yeah. And so they go and they try to they do see that there are some outlaws near this
I like how
cottage.
the outlaws are just like javelinas. Like they're just
Yeah.
wandering in the
Yeah,
back.
this one guy just comes out from like outside the cottage and doesn't even try talking to them. He just suddenly starts shooting at them, and then suddenly it's this big horse chase where it almost seemed
It's a
like
side mission.
it seemed like
in
a
a Red
Tom
Dead.
and Jerry type of way to catch the villain, because what they did was they tied a rope between two trees, and then the guy just ended up getting knocked off his horse that way.
It still is pretty intense that they're really riding horses.
Yeah.
They're really shooting
Like I said,
blanks, I would assume. But
there are a ton of horses and ton of guns in this show. The strange thing about that section, though, was I understand they were trying to introduce all the characters, but those convicts that they catch, or those outlaws, whatever you want to call them, never really come back to play in the pilot episode.
Are you sure they're not part of the later on thing with the bomb and the person trying to kill Kayce?
I don't think that they are. I don't think that they are, because I think that this was just a way to show the team, to introduce us to the team and how they kind of get stuff done.
Okay, if we get blasted by the fans and they're like, they absolutely were part of the later on storyline, don't be mad at us. There were a lot of commercials in this.
Yes.
It was like a 2-hour premiere, and really there was only like an hour's worth of content.
Yeah, and Tracker looks kind of interesting this week.
That too. Yeah, so Kayce, let's say he's joined the squad.
Yes.
And so I think the biggest crux of the thing, where everything really kicks off, is when are they celebrating something when the bomb goes off?
No, what's happening is they are...
There's a protest.
Yeah, there's a protest because Secretary Clark, I guess the person who kind of runs part of Black Rock, she is trying to mine, and they don't want mining on the reservation.
There's always been a government fighting, the people who are there for other, the people who own the land. Yeah.
And that is why the chairman, led by Chairman Rainwater, who I assume has to be from the original series, right?
Yeah, and they almost kill him off here.
Yeah, no, they do, because he gets injured by a bomb blast. What happened was Kayce saw that there was like a black hooded figure right behind a tree.
This is again like the javelinas. The bad guys just like kind of just pop out there, stick their noses out, and you're like, oh, you got to squash them before they cause chaos.
And then no one recognized, except for Belle, right before the bomb went off, that there was a bag that was unattended. So as Secretary Clark is going up to speak, that's suddenly when the bomb goes off and Rainwater gets injured. Now, they play it off later on in the episode like this was supposed to be some kind of a twist, because they actually were trying to hurt Rainwater more than Secretary Clark. I didn't feel the need.
They made it seem like it was an assassination on the secretary's life, but in reality, it was supposed to be for him.
Yeah, it was supposed to be against Rainwater.
Yes.
And we learned that the person that did it, because he's just kind of anti-BlackRock, anti the people there.
He's not like he is a political figure or something. I forget.
Well, so this is the interesting part. Kayce, they do they look at some security footage and they realize that Jim Kane, he's a tribal member. They catch his face, but Jim Kane was in proximity of the bomb when it went off, so he's in the hospital.
So it'd be weird if he was the person who was responsible.
Right. And right as Kayce goes to kind of talk to Jim Kane in the hospital to see what exactly was going on, he catches John Decker, this doctor, and he's like, something isn't right here. The shoes aren't fitting, and Jim Kane is looking at him, and again, the shoes aren't like a doctor's. So he tries to follow John Decker, which led to my favorite part of the
I thought it was a nurse.
episode.
So I saw the what you're about to describe, but I thought that was a nurse, and I didn't think I would have nurse with a scalpel on my bingo card.
Yeah, he goes into this bathroom and he's checking the stalls, and suddenly, I guess he might be a nurse, but John Decker, he comes out with this knife, it looked like, but you're saying it was a scalpel?
I'm just saying it would be funnier if it was a scalpel.
And this insane fight scene just suddenly started to happen. Like, he's trying to stab Kayce, and Kayce takes him by the head and smashes his head against a window, almost like it was a Substance style, and then you have them fighting, and then Kayce pulls out a gun and then shoots him 3 times dead. It was like the funniest thing to see because it just seemed like that was probably the most outlandish that the show got at that
Well,
moment.
Casey at the end has a little monologue when he's talking to Rainwater, and he
Mm.
says something along the lines of like, I'm glad I was able to kill for someone rather than
Oh,
something. And then the guy's like, "You're not a killer." And then I thought back to that scene, and then I thought back to the scene that where he kills someone else later on, kills the main bad guy, and I'm like, "No, he's absolutely a
yes.
killer."
That was the first kill that we saw, but that wasn't the only person that Kayce killed. So we learned that Jim Kane,
Let's
yeah,
just say they did like track down the wire. If people want to watch the
right.
episode or haven't already seen it, they follow all the leads, they get to the bad guy,
Right,
and because this is a procedural.
and they learned that, and I kinda liked how it wasn't just, like, 50 minutes and the bad guy either died or went to jail because they went farther beyond that. Jim Kane, his family gets stolen, and the daughter
His
had a
family
tracker.
gets kidnapped,
Yeah, he gets kidnapped because John
abducted.
Decker was yeah, he was trying to kind of, get him to do this stuff. So the whole entire team goes there, and you would think that this team consisting of all these SEAL team members would
I
be
thought they were
able.
marshals, though, right?
Yeah, they are Marshals,
Right.
hence the name of the show.
Yeah.
But when they get to the house where Jim Kane's family is, you would think that they would be capable of keeping it themselves. No, it seems like Kayce Dutton kills everyone. He is the hero of the entire thing. He goes
He
into
goes
this house.
peacemaker.
Yes, he's killing like 8 people, and then like all that ends up happening is I think Belle ends up getting shot, and she's fine because of her like what she's wearing. But it's really Kayce Dutton's time to shine because not only is he killing everyone, he's even torturing people trying to figure out where they took Jim Kane's daughter. Then he goes to that place and ends up taking out the main bad guy.
Yeah.
I was like, Kayce Dutton can just do this job on his own.
I'm like, everything you said there sounded like what I saw. The only thing I push back on is I think that they're not all Navy SEALs. I think it's just him and his
Right.
friend, and
No.
they're all marshals because I think Belle like even explained where she was from.
As I stated, Belle is, yeah, you're right. She was a former ATF person, and then Andrea, yeah, she's trying to avenge her dad's, who was a cop. Yeah, I talked
You
about.
got excited because of the guy who's created it, and you're like, this is a SEAL
It
team
was
2.0.
I got excited because I was just like, Kayce Dutton is just like he is the main person here, and
Right.
he's the
So if
one
I were to
person-
compare him to other marshals that we've talked about on this show, we
Raylan
talked
Gibbons.
about there's yes, justified Raylan Gibbons. Then there's also the Last Frontier, the main cop in that, who's
Right.
chasing down all the bad guys. I think he's a marshal supervisor, so he actually has more credentials than these other guys. And then there's Lawman Bass Reeves. He was the first, I think, African American a marshal.
And
So
I remember Lawman Bass Reeves was supposed to be in the Yellowstone universe, but then they nixed that idea.
that's exciting. Yeah. It seems like everything's underneath the umbrella of Yellowstone because it's all the numbered ones and then it's this one, but I don't think the Madison is. But anyway, so this is, as far as a procedural opening, did you think that it worked?
No, because I didn't think that it was any different than any of the shows that they were advertising during the commercial breaks. NCIS, FBI, CIA, even
Tracker?
Tracker. Yeah, like it just seemed like it was the same exact thing.
Did it
as
remind you
that.
of the main character, I guess? Did he remind you of the Banshee main character? Because he takes the law into his
Lucas
own
Hood?
hand and he shoots a lot of people.
Lucas Hood? Sure. Yeah.
The
I mean, I
reason,
guess.
yeah, because they have the same director for this first episode
Oh,
as
okay.
the pilot of Banshee.
You know, there was a lot of action. Maybe it wasn't as crazy as Banshee got. The part that I didn't like the most, though, was that the whole entire reason that he didn't shoot the wolf, I was talking about how much I liked that. At the very end of the
we hear
episode,
a gunshot.
Well, yes, at the very end of the episode, he's talking to Monica at the grave. I actually thought that scene worked for the show. But then, yeah, he's like, I'm going to change my life. And he takes out the gun and he tries to shoot the wolf.
We see the gun, we hear the shot, but I didn't see his finger twitch. So
What
I
do you
think
think?
there was someone else who shot at it.
Huh.
I don't know.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I was wondering why, because even though you said that they dropped the
Because
Y
what if that's like
Marshals-
the ghost of his wife? What if his wife's spirit went and was like, I know my husband, and he would never shoot this spiritual wolf, and so like it went into and okay.
I was trying to figure out why it was called Y or Marshals because they always had the Y in the background.
I already explained it.
Yeah, no. I know that it's on his chest, but like
no,
it
I was
looked-
just joking.
it looked like it was fire.
It's
poked.
short for Yellowstone.
It looked like it was fire poked as opposed to a tattoo, at least from what I saw. Because we see him without a shirt when
So
he
you're
wakes
just saying
up
like
from the dream.
there's so many cows around, rather than having to waste money getting a tattoo, why not just brand yourself?
Yeah, or I was wondering if someone else did it to him,
Like his dad?
possibly. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I don't. I don't know if that's answered in Yellowstone. Maybe his wife did that to him. I don't know. People are into some weird things. Anyways, so do you want to hear reception or do you want to rank it first?
Yeah, I'll give it a 5 out of 10 because Tate I thought was the worst character. All the other characters I thought were actually fine. Him shooting the wolf I wasn't a big fan of.
How about Carl?
Carl?
Yes, if you were to compare Tate's like kind of awfulness to Carl's awfulness from The Walking Dead, because Carl improved, right? By the end, people did not dislike his character as much.
Yeah, I mean, like,
There
I
were
don't
those
know.
awkward teenage years where people were not fans of Carl.
If Tate is who I'm thinking of, then yeah, he really has grown up since the pilot of Yellowstone.
Also, you got to think of like Dexter.
Yeah.
Harrison's journey has been one of fraught animosity and angst as well,
It's
and
funny you
he's
bring
turned out okay.
It's funny you bring up Dexter because Dexter was also a show that they showed on CBS the first season, just like they did for Yellowstone.
It was
So,
always Showtime, though, right?
yeah. So I think overall the show is like fine if you're just kind of trying to turn your brain off, but I would only recommend it to like serious Yellowstone fans who just want like to follow their favorite characters.
That's
again.
interesting because it's for sure not for that. It's for sure supposed to widen the grip to anybody who wants to just be checking out.
I don't think it succeeded in that way, but it did also remind me of Longmire, The Abandons, and Dark Winds.
Okay. Newsday gave it a negative review. TV Line said Marshals is CBS's Yellowstone spinoff, a prestige procedural with a dash of Dutton. So that was a positive one. Screen Rant called it risky, but said it might pay off in later episodes. Daily Beast did not mince their words. They did not like it. They said CBS turns Yellowstone into an embarrassing NCIS ripoff.
Yeah, see, that was
So it sounds like that's what you agree with most.
That was the weird thing where Yellowstone is very heavy on story, and this is supposed to be episodic. That was very strange to me. A strange direction to take it.
Last two I'll give you is Collider gave it a 7 out of 10, and then TV Cave, which I've never heard of before, but they said, while the action is tight, the character development feels like it was pulled from a procedural trope 101 class.
Because every single character just explains why you should care about them. Like,
or what happened previously.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that like there was no point where it was any type of subtlety was
If you
added.
turn off the volume and you just watch because of how cool the scenes look, it's kind of like a show that we're going to be like with the Grey House. Grey House has some good content in it too, but like it's two beautiful shows in a row. You know, you can't go wrong with American landscapes when you're actually shooting outside rather than in a green screen.
The way it was shot reminded me a lot of Hell or High Water, which was written by Sheridan, but it
really
kind of
was that his first show?
No, that was a movie, but it was.
Oh shoot! You know, I was confusing it to Hell's Wheels or whatever it's called.
Yeah, Hell on Wheels. I don't think Sheridan had anything to do with that.
That was too early, yeah.
But Hell or High Water had kind of the same layout of the house where there was rocking chairs, and so whenever like Tate and Kayce were talking, it kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
If this show was to have like a Sons of Anarchy run, and then at the end of it there were like two characters to start a podcast like Tig and Juice did, who would be the two characters to do it from this that you would be most interested in?
Okay, well, probably I would say Calvin, and let's throw in Miles. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.